Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Not That Important. Today, we're looking back at the two semifinals India versus New Zealand and Australia versus South Africa. Of course, Pakistan didn't even make it to the semifinals, and we'll definitely do a deconstruction of Pakistan's World Cup campaign. That'll be coming out in the next couple of days. But for now, we're focusing on reviewing these two semifinals. So, Arman, let's start with India versus New Zealand.
Yeah, we definitely need a break from Pakistan cricket for a little bit. So this episode will give us a little bit of separation. The first semi-final, obviously, India getting through pretty comfortably in the end. It looked like a close game for a bit, didn't it? Before Kane Williamson got out, Shan.
It did, but like maybe more if you're an Indian fan. From like a neutral perspective, it was always like too big of a task. I felt for New Zealand. New Zealand, like obviously in typical New Zealand fashion, make it a fight out of like every difficult situation that they find themselves in. Other teams would have found themselves at like having lost those openers early, without much on the board, chasing like almost 400. They would have collapsed, but not New Zealand. Like they might not be able to get over the line, but they never seem to really, um, you know, lose face in these sort of situations. That's something that you really have to respect about their team. Um, but overall, yeah, like coming back to when Williamson got out, I think even before then, the run rate was excessive, and you knew that India only needed a wicket or two to get back into the game.
I don't I have a slightly different angle because the run rate did look like it was a lot, but India were like they lost the plot for that I don't know if it was a 6-7 over period where like I think they might have dropped. I know Shami for sure dropped a catch. I think somebody else might have Ravindra Jadeja, obviously one of the best fielders in the world, and he's getting hyped up, but then he kind of loses it as well and
Hmm.
throws four runs away for absolutely no
Yeah,
reason. You could almost see the wheels coming off a little bit at that point. It reminded me a bit of like that 2016 game in Mumbai against West Indies where they were defending in the semifinals and things just ended up going wrong. So I saw a little bit of element of that, but then man, like Shami really has a shout to be the man of the tournament because everything, all the stages in which they caught momentum was when he came back into the attack. He's been excellent.
agreed. Like I want to talk about Shami, but just wanted to follow up on your point about the fielding. It's dude, India hasn't had a single game in this World Cup where they've been under pressure, right? So probably good for them going ahead into the final to at least get that sort of moment where they had to regroup. And they did have, I think there was a drinks break where they really got together as a team and they came out the other side of that drinks break with a plan. Like Jadeja bowled a few overs, like he just gets through them quickly, right? And at the end of the day, in that sort of situation, when the scoreboard pressure is building up, you get through a few overs quickly without conceding too many runs. That's all it takes to get back in the game, and the pressure really told then. As for Shami's drop catch, yeah, like I obviously would have preferred for New Zealand to win this game. But even when he dropped this catch, I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't come back to cost them because these guys will slaughter this guy. And he's been playing so well this entire World Cup. Like he wasn't even in the squad to begin with. And it's crazy how things work out, right? Like Hardik Pandya was injured, but it ended up paving the way for Mohammad Shami to really star in this World Cup. And his record is phenomenal. He deservedly is the leading wicket taker. And again, in today's game, when Bumrah was a bit all over the place at the start, and it seemed like New Zealand might have had an opportunity to go hard at the bowlers in the first power play. He came out and got those two wickets, removed the openers without much on the board, and set the tone for India as he's done throughout this tournament. So just remarkable to see a guy who has been around for a while, but it seemed like just before this World Cup, he'd been discarded as like the first choice, and it was really about Bumrah, Siraj, and the spinners. To see him step up, credit to him. A lot of players can, when they're in and out of the team and things like that, they can lose hope. But this guy actually worked harder, and he backed his skills, and he came out and delivered when it mattered.
Yeah, a lot of respect. I think one of the English commentators, I think it might have been Nick Knight, said this about Liam Dawson, and I think it applies beautifully to Shami as well. That he's always the bridesmaid, but he's never the bride. And in this campaign, you kind of see him like he looks like their best bowler right now. And I like what you said about having a little bit of that human element still. Like we wanted obviously New Zealand to win that game, but I don't think either of us really wanted it to be because of him that they lost, because of how well he's played and some of the crap he's had to put up with in the past. So he's bowling really really well, and it's one of those things you talked about at the beginning of the tournament that India kind of, they go towards playing defensive cricket when the pressure's on. And this World Cup, they've done the opposite, whether it's Rohit Sharma at the top or even Mohammad Shami getting their best five bowlers together. It might have been forced in a lot of ways with Pandya's injury, but they look a completely different side without too much let up in their bowling attack right now.
Agreed, completely. And I think Rohit's captaincy is really commendable. Obviously, I want to talk about the batting, and it's been 6 minutes, and everyone will be like, "Oh, it's been 6 minutes," and we haven't talked about the man at the moment in Kohli, but we'll come to that as well. Um, but as far as his captaincy goes, the way he rotates his bowlers, the way the decisions he's making, the fields he sets, like he had Jadeja in the hot spots to take all the catches in the end when the players were having to slog. Like the New Zealand players, it always seemed to find Jadeja, which means that they had calculated that those are the opportunities that the batsman will take, and that's the area they'll target. Let's have our best fielder there. So something as simple as that, which often isn't highlighted, can make a difference. Right at the end of the day, all these teams are um, they're very good, right? They're coming into a World Cup. These are world class players in every team. There's a reason they've reached the semifinals. So the margins will be even finer in terms of where you can get an edge. And I think his captaincy has really been on point throughout. And if I take that into the first innings, with them getting started, and this has been a theme throughout this World Cup, where he's really put his individual records to the side and said, "Okay, look, we have like the world's possibly like best batting lineup here in terms of like high class players throughout the top five. I, as a captain, can take the initiative to just take the game to the bowlers and put pressure on them immediately because these guys will benefit from that lower down, even if that means me losing my wicket. And I think that's really commendable. It's not something we often see. Like we saw it from Brendan McCullum in the 2015 World Cup, but he was a different sort of player, right? Like Brendan McCullum was destructive. Yes, he was like explosive. He had that ability, but he was never recognized as one of the best batsmen in the world. Rohit comes into that conversation, and the fact that he can put his ego aside and say, "Okay, I'm going to play this way because that's the benefit of my team." It's amazing to see. I guess there's an argument that could say that it's been 10 years and India has had like the same sort of batting lineup. Maybe if they'd adopted this sort of approach earlier, they would have been able to get some more titles because, like we spoke about in previews and stuff, when the going gets tough, they tend to fall back into that defensive mindset. But here, from the start, coming down to Trent Bolt at the start of the innings, even though what the pitch seemed to be a little bit slow, but he trusted the Wankhede. It's where he's played all his cricket. He trusted the pitch, and he made full use of that. And I think credit to him.
Yeah, nothing really to add to that. You stole my point about Brendan McCullum, who's obviously one of that era of his, like the 2015 World Cup. I know they didn't win the trophy, but he's the one player who I will always remember from that tournament because of the initiative he took up front and the kind of fields he set. And the way Rohit is playing is really, really reminding me of that. Like Rohit kind of is in that stage of his career where I don't think he cares anymore. I think he's playing without any inhibitions, and he's always been one of the most destructive batters ever. But now coming out from ball one, and like you said, really just being unselfish and setting the platform for what is perhaps their best batting lineup since the 2011 World Cup. I know they've always had class players, but this is something different right now. The kind of talent and class they have at each position. Someone as assured as KL Rahul coming in at number five. Who's the weak link in their batting? It's Sky, who's like the number one ranked T20 player.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the clarity
and
of
I
role as well. I feel like every player knows what their role is in this team and how they need to play. For example, Kohli looks to bat the 50 overs, and whoever's batting with him really looks to take the initiative. Shubman Gill at the start is a classical sort of batsman, but like Rohit Sharma and Iyer are really taking on the mantle of like the run rate being up and really taking
yeah,
the game to the opposition. So putting the pressure off Kohli, letting him play his natural game, and then
and
coming
that
to
guy's locked in. Kohli is as locked in as you've ever seen him right now. I think again with him, like guys with Sharma and Kohli, you know, by all estimation, this is probably their last World Cup. Of course, you never know. Players can play till they're 40, 41, 42, whatever. But I just have a feeling that this might be the last one. So both of them are really like, instead of being, a prisoner to the moment, they've been empowered by it, knowing that, this is the last chance they have in front of like a home crowd to really put on for everybody. And it's really it's nice to see them both playing at their best right now.
Exactly. And then, there's always like conspiracy theories, especially Hamaya Mulk mein, in terms of like what's going on. I've seen all this bullshit about toss and things like that. And then, but the way this moment played out, like Kohli getting to his 50th century in front of Tendulkar in a World Cup semi-final at the Wankhede, it's like almost out of a script, right? Like as if someone's written it, and so it plays into those sort of narratives. But it was
Further,
perfect sort of moment for him to
yeah.
get it over here in front of everyone. Beckham bhi pahuncha hua tha, like the stage was set, everyone was.
या मतलब क्रिकेट की बात करते हैं खैर
Yeah.
छोड़ो क्रिकेट की बात
So, but he delivers
but no
finally
I
to get a century in a knockout game in a one
had to
day. So
happen as
it
much
had to
as
happen.
much as he played. It had to happen at some, and to a certain extent एक बनता भी है, for
Yeah.
such a legendary player to have such a legendary accomplishment missing is, it didn't really suit the character and the myth, the man, the legend that is Virat Kohli. So it's good in a way to see him get that off. Do we have anything to say about New Zealand? They've been consistent. I think this is their fourth or fifth semi-final, and I think this is probably the end of an era now, at least in white ball cricket. They got to the finals. Excuse me. They got to the semi-finals in 2007, 2011, where they were not favorites at all, and then as one of the favorites at home, they got to the final and had like a insane campaign, and just maybe the occasion was a little bit too much for them against Australia. And then
Bro, I don't
2019,
even think it's the occasion. It's like whenever anyone comes against Australia now, wo baap and type of situations ke liye. And which is why, like, obviously we'll talk about like the India Australia final and we'll like a little bit, but it's interesting that it's them two that are in the final, because if there's anyone who can match up to that occasion in front of 130,000 people, I do feel India's team is heads and shoulders above Australia. They're bowling, they're batting right now in terms of the way everything is clicking. But if there's any team that can like step up to the occasion and get this done, it's the manhoos Australians who always seem to get the job done.
मैं अपना मोनोलॉग खत्म कर लूं जरा आपको कुछ और बोलना था
Go for it, bro.
नहीं नहीं मजाक कर रहा हूँ. Those are all very fair points. I was just going to talk about like the 2019 World Cup, where I think any neutral cricket fan can't say that they lost that World Cup, because they didn't fucking lose that World Cup. They it ended up on a tie. And then they've had some good T20 World Cups. Against the icing on the cake for this generation was probably the World Test Championship they won. But for guys like, we've seen Ross Taylor go already, but especially Kane Williamson, Trent Bolt, and Tim Southee, uh, what an era for New Zealand cricket this has been. Probably the best ever in their history. So obviously a little bit of sadness to see those guys. Probably, you never know with Trent Bolt, but for Tim Southee and Kane Williamson, maybe their last World Cup. I think the other positive thing for them now is they truly have world class players at almost every position now. Mitchell Santner's a world class spinner. Daryl Mitchell, what a find he's been. Like, it's
Yeah.
been 3 or 4 years in the making, but if you line him up against the other number four batters in the world, he's going to be pretty near the top. Uh, and then I mean, just to finish on them quickly, I think Russian Ravindra has obviously been one of the finds of not just this year but the last few years. I love the way that guy plays. He has maturity beyond his years in terms of experience. So hopefully a lot of really good stuff to come from him, and then guys like Devin Conway. So New Zealand cricket as always is headed in the right direction. I guess this is just another. Again, this is the stage that they continuously,
They can't
lack
catch a break.
success.
They can't
They
catch a
can't
break.
catch a break at times. I mean, they caught a couple of breaks over us the last couple of years, but but
The
but
thing
yeah,
is, and also
if
they didn't
this
have. I think it showed in the first innings as well, because I think Saudi on these sort of flat tracks with his pace, he isn't really up to that level, right? Like he can bowl in like New Zealand and England conditions, but over here, and I think they missed Matt Henry due to injury. He's someone who might have been able to have a little bit more success, but credit to them, they always get the job done. They exceed what we expect of them at the start of the tournament.
Always, always. With
Always.
Kane, without Kane, their half their team is injured. They fly in a bloke from New Zealand. He doesn't play. They're
Mhm.
still fine. Like it doesn't matter. These
Mhm.
guys are some of the ultimate fighters. They never make any excuses. Just an all around like a class act of a team.
Yeah, and then just
Uh,
coming full circle, sorry, for what you said at the start about whether I felt they would have been able to chase it down. I think one of the reasons, and something I forgot to mention earlier, was they had Latham, Phillips, and Chapman slated in to come next, and then obviously Santner. I didn't really have faith. Maybe Phillips, I could have expected to have a sort of knock that could have really taken the game to India at that stage, but I didn't really expect anything from the other guys in this sort of
yeah.
situation. So I think that
100%.
worked
I think
out
it was a
for
situation where maybe you're hoping for a couple of cameos, but I think Kane had to get 100.
yeah.
I think Kane getting out was the turning point. Phillips was playing like I think he took Siraj for like 20, and then Kuldeep, they actually I thought had been doing a good job, and throughout this
Mhm.
tournament they've done a good job at kind of putting him off a little bit. But Kuldeep bowled it over for one, and
Well, that was insane. Yeah,
I think that like right there was where the game ended.
exactly.
At that
Agree
point. Uh,
for
so
sure.
yeah, India looked really good, and then we'll move into the other semifinal, which was, do we put that in thriller status or is it slightly below thriller status?
I think by the end, you have to say it was a thriller overall.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Man, what is it with these guys? Like Cummins and Stark, not only are they your stalwarts in bowling for the last decade, but these guys don't panic with the bat either. They just have this
Yeah.
innate ability. Cummins, we've seen it a few times this year with the Ashes, with the 68 ball 12 not out, with Mr. Glenn Maxwell. They enjoy themselves in those situations, and I thought it was awesome to get them home. Obviously, South Africa, couple of missed opportunities that they'll rue. Um, but I thought they made a hell of a game out of it, especially after that opening stand between
Yeah.
Head and Warner.
For sure. I think I just want to go back to the first innings. Um, Stark, who has been the top wicket taker in 2015 and 2019, really one of the all-time World Cup greats, hasn't really been himself in this World Cup, but as they say, come at the hour, come at the man, and semi-final stage, he steps up, gets some early breakthroughs for them. So Australia's Pacers finally delivering when it matters, and they have the caliber, they have the experience, they have the quality. These three have been around for so long, playing all formats in every condition, that you expect them to have the know-how to deliver in these sort of moments, and they did. Hazelwood was immaculate, kept the pressure on, not even a chance for the South African batsmen to free themselves. And at the end, the pressure really told. And also on Cummins, in terms of his captaincy, like I think South Africa 24 for 2 after the power play, but he gave both Stark and Hazelwood an extra over, and they both picked up another wicket at that point. And I think that was a really crucial stage, because if South Africa had been able to get through that period, because we really saw that they were able to take the game to Zampa, if we'd introduced Zampa a little bit earlier there and they hadn't got a couple of more breakthroughs, it could have been an opening for South Africa to get back into the game. And so those sort of decisions, I feel, were really important. I haven't heard anyone talk about that just yet. So I wanted to definitely highlight that Cummins doesn't always get his fair due as a captain, but like Test Championship this year, Ashes retention, now World Cup final, like he really is coming into his own as a captain as well.
He's a terrific cricketer. I do think he has a couple of mistakes in him as a captain, though, bro. I think, I mean, you could look at it two ways. He continued to bowl Zampa and Miller, which you could be like, this is my attacking bowler. And that's something you want to see in the best captains, is that they continue to give the ball to their match winners despite everything. Just at a certain point, you thought he bowled him maybe 2 or 3 overs extra. Like if you wanted to go to the spinner, maybe you could have stuck with the Travis Head because David Miller was having a field day against Adam Zampa in the past match. But I guess that's maybe a results based thing if I'm being very nitpicky. But he himself is such a great performer. And just on another interesting note, if they manage to win this World Cup, can you imagine they've won a T20 World Cup, a World Chess Test Championship, and then a ODI World Cup with the nucleus formed around these three bowlers,
Yeah.
right? Like that elevates them. If not, they already are there, but it just further elevates them into like the folklore of like the best fast bowling
I
attacks
mean,
of
all
all
three of them
time.
have already won a World Cup, right? And then this would be their second.
Yeah,
I believe
yeah.
all three of
Come,
them are around in
I guess
2015.
like I think Stark is the only one who like played in all three. like T20 World Cup, they all three played. I think in I can't remember, one of them might have missed out on the Test Championship, but I think they were still there for the duration of that calendar year, the calendar 2 years that it takes to get
Hmm.
to the Test Championship final, and then obviously Cummins missed out on the World Cup final and a lot of those matches. But like I'm saying, they're already there. But this would just, I mean, you put them up there with some of the best trios of all time, and if they're not
100%.
already there,
Yeah,
right? All
definitely.
such great, unique performers in their own right. All very different, very very different. All of them in their skill set, but what an attack!
And then obviously I referred to Zampa struggling a little bit. The South Africans at that point, 4 wickets down, Miller and Klaassen come to the crease a lot earlier than they would want to be. And just going back to the toss, South Africa, obviously favoring batting first throughout this tournament, they've heavily struggled chasing. Everyone knows that. Then there was definitely overcast conditions. So I wonder if it ever came into Bamuma's mind to chase. But in the end, he went with batting first. And to be fair, like I think overall, the call wasn't
Correct
wrong or
decision.
anything like that. It just that the circumstances played out a little bit differently, and in the end, it was a close game. Could have gone differently, but I think the real turning point here was Clausen's wicket, right? Because him and Miller were counter-attacking. They were taking the attack to the Australian
Wonderful counter attack.
bowlers, and then Henrik Clausen has his Mohammad Hafiz moment where he gets bowled to Travis Head, and
After hitting two boundaries.
that's really where the game changes there.
And then Gerald Coetzee not taking a review
Yeah,
when he was Marco Jansen or Gerald Coetzee, one of
no,
them.
it was coach
Uh,
because Jansen got removed by Head as well. It was like successive
हाँ, वो तो
deliveries.
अगले बॉल पे आउट हुआ था, सही
Yeah,
बात है. It was Coetzee, and I don't know. There's a lot of interesting dynamics here. Like I guess you have to say that Miller has played one of the best World Cup innings of all time,
yeah,
considering what he
no
did.
doubt.
You kind of, man, you wish he went on a little bit more because I think those 20 runs could have made the difference.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, man. Like people get on Temba Bavuma a lot. I'm a fan of his captaincy. I maybe he could have brought the spinners on a little bit early. Obviously, Kotsia had the catch dropped of Travis Head in that over, so it could have gone either way. But I like how I like for the most part how he goes about things as captain. And this South Africa bowling attack is a truly special one. If you look at it, like they have every base covered. Rabada and Jensen didn't have their best days, but man, like we talked about Rachin Ravindra, I think for the bowlers, the guy was probably impressed me the most. Obviously, there's Dilshan Madhushanka from Sri Lanka, but I'm a big fan of Gerald Coetzee, man. I really like what he's brought to the table. I love the pace he bowls with. I
Yeah.
love the aggression. Man, that ball to get Inglis out around the wicket,
Hmm.
that was special, bro.
Yeah.
Like out of nowhere, he decided to change his angle and he got those two massive wickets. Then you have Tabre Shamsi. I think it was a really, really good effort from the South Africans. Obviously, a couple of things maybe didn't go their way in terms of half chances and stuff, but I thought they made a really, really good game out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And they've had an excellent campaign. Overall, like I think their batsmen have been like just bludgeoning opponents batting first throughout, and their bowlers, the youngsters like Jansen and Kotze, about 23, I think, have really stood out. Obviously, today Jansen went for runs, and I think that's something other teams have identified after the India game when Rohit took him apart. Okay, you know, you can come out strong to him and put him off his lengths a little bit, and that's exactly what Head and
You
Warner
do
did.
that with any bowler in the world, and I think
Yeah.
that's what people need to realize. There's not a bowler in the world who's immune to that. I had a quick question though about the end of the game there. We saw Kotsia cramp up, so he had one over left, which they didn't bowl him. I know I was raving about Bavuma's captaincy either, but I would have liked to see those two overs bowled by Jansen have gone to Rabada.
Hmm.
I would have. I think just at that moment, like that, your young kid's having an off day, bro. Give it to the guy.
Yeah.
Cariso's supposed to be the guy, right? So I was disappointed that he didn't get the ball there. But yeah, anyways, Australia go through. Hux, if I were to ask you what each of these teams' weaknesses are going forward into the final, um, you want to start with Australia? What do you see?
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up a little bit on South Africa. I feel like I didn't give Miller his due. I think that was like a coming of age sort of knock for him. Not like he's been around for so long. He averages 40 plus. He has a strike rate of 100 plus, but getting 100 in a semifinal for him was a great moment. Unfortunate not to end up on the winning side, but he really deserved it with that innings.
And
And
then
then
yeah.
And
Another
then
guy with the same initials, we got to give that props. I don't think we talked too much about Daryl Mitchell either, but
yeah,
just an incredible innings from his as well in the
for
losing
sure.
cause.
Absolutely. And then just overall with South Africa, I know like we mentioned, they had a great campaign. They deserve to be here. Unfortunate not to go ahead, but I think looking at their history, looking at their team, I don't want to be too harsh here, but I really don't think that they would have been able to challenge India in that sort of atmosphere at the Ahmedabad Stadium
And
with
why does that matter? Tell the
130,000.
viewers why that matters, bro.
Why does that matter?
Why
Because
does
we
that matter?
because we want to see a good final, bro. We want to see a close game. We want to see the Aussies come out and fight as well. But at the end of the day, this is the annoying part for me. Um, like Australia India final, oh, like not what I was wanting to see. If I'm going to be honest, like two teams I would choose not to be in the final, it would be these two. Australia,
Yeah,
it बहुत जीत
straight
लिया,
up.
बहुत जीत लिया, and India, of
Or
course, perennial
India.
rivals. So don't need to explain that at all. But yeah, sorry, you were asking about what their weaknesses are. I think with India, if you look at their bowling, everything has so far gone its way. They only have five options. So if any bowler gets taken to the cleaners in Australia, they'll come out targeting at least one or two bowlers. Maybe Siraj, maybe Kuldeep. No one has been able to quite take him to the cleaners so far. If someone was to do that, of course, that's a big if because he's a quality bowler, right? It's not like so easy as to just plan, okay, we'll come out and hit him. Actually, executing on that is very difficult. But if they were to do that and put pressure on Rohit to think about his options or how to maneuver his bowlers, I think that's where like the game lies for Australia. As for their weaknesses, I think overall their batting lineup I don't feel is as reliable as India's. Like I know Head and Warner at the start are very explosive, and when they get going, they can really take the game away from the opposition. And similar with Marsh, but beyond that, Smith and Labuschagne haven't really fired. And there's like with Maxwell, it's of course he had that insane knock, but it's a little bit of a hit and miss as we saw in this game here, right? So if I feel like if they don't get an explosive start at the top, and Smith and Labuschagne are in early, yes, they have the ability to bat long, but do they have the ability to bat at the strike rates where they'll be able to take the game to India? Because that's, I have no doubts about this. Like if Australia are to win this game, they're going to have to bat above par. They're going to have to bowl above par. I know Nasser Hussain, I was listening to him. He said this, that they're going to have to like outplay India in all departments to be actually able to compete. And I agree with that because I think India's a better team. And in these conditions, the conditions suit them more. They're the home side. Everything's in their favor. But if there's anyone you want in that situation, with having the mentality to deal with that pressure and come out and take the game to India, it's Australia, right? Like typically we've seen over the
Essentially.
years, like this sort of generation has grown up watching teams continue to win tournaments after tournament and not let up. So they're not going to be satisfied by reaching a final. They're not going to come out to enjoy the occasion. They're going to come out to win. And then India, on the other hand, will have the pressure of obviously an entire nation on their shoulders. So that's where I feel. How about you?
Yeah, just to piggyback a lot of the same points as you, I think it's at that stage where India does only have those five bowlers. So I think you have to hit someone out of the attack, bro. I
Mhm.
think it's a lot easier said than done
Yeah,
because they're all bowling like champions right now. But someone's got to go for like 80, bro.
yeah,
75,
for
80.
sure.
Like maybe this is a little bit of like a hot-headed, like not that educated of a take, but I just straight up think that they have to smack someone to kind of see. Maybe they have to hide a bowler from one end. Maybe they don't feel comfortable to hide a bowler and he has to bowl his 10.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I've been saying since before the World Cup started was I their batting lineup is as strong as it is. It's a really long tail after Jadeja. But the thing is, man, like no one's been able to get them to collapse this whole tournament. There was the one game against England where I think Sky played okay. Then there was the
I mean,
game against New
Australia.
Zealand where
Australia had the chance. They had those three early wickets, and they dropped the catch of Kohli. So they.
exactly, exactly. So they had the chance, and then New Zealand got it down to Jadeja, but they couldn't get Jadeja out. So I don't. You have to get them six down. I think the key is to get them six down. I
It's
think
a,
that's the only way to restrict their batting because I think the rest of those guys can fall really easily. But aside from that, India don't have any glaring flaws. If I talk about Australia, man, this team is running off will. Like, don't get me wrong, it's an excellent team, but there's a lot of holes in this team.
Yeah,
The
agreed.
two thoroughbreds that we talked about, Smith and Labuschagne, do you play both of them? You could play both of them if they're playing well, but neither of them are playing well. So do
Yeah.
you flip a coin between them? Do you lean
But
Smith?
then
Do you lean Labuschagne? And
sorry to
then,
interrupt you, but if you were to do that, like Stoinis, okay, like
bro,
is
but you
he
could have
really?
Smith maybe bat at three and push someone down to four like a
Yeah,
Marsh.
they
Give
could do that.
you could get a Cam Green in. Like they have, it's not like they don't have options. Um, and then the other thing that I was gonna say about them is like I would actually say bowling is by far Australia's strength because I can't remember a single game where they've chased and they haven't collapsed. They've won all of those games except for the South Africa one. But bro, like every single game they've chased, they've looked like they can completely wilt under the pressure, and a lot of it has just been individual brilliance. And I guess that's another blessing in its own that koi nahi chale, one out of five guys koi na koi 150 maar dega.
Yeah,
So it's also
and I
like or
think at the end
200
of the day,
or 176.
to
But I just I think the best chance for Australia is to bat first, put runs on the board, and then back their bowlers. I don't know if I would want them chasing in front of those many people.
yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I think both teams will want to probably bat first with the final sort of pressure. Um, with Australia, it's more like I feel like a team of individuals right now versus like India is like a team as a whole, and I think that's really where the crux of the matter lies. But I think at the end of the day, like Australia obviously had a rough start, but they bounced back well and they've won like a number of matches on the trot. And India obviously is undefeated, so the right final in terms of performance and in terms of who deserves to be here. And hopefully it's a good game because yeah, I mean obviously if it lives up to the 2019 game, that would be another level. But just even if it's a close game in
Anything
itself,
near that would be
it
great.
would be
I'm just gonna go through a couple of key matchups before we get off here, bro. So we talked a lot about Brendan McCullum running through everybody, Dale Steyn, Jimmy Anderson, जो भी आया उसके सामने उसने पेल दिया that whole tournament. लेकिन एक बंदे ने उसके डंडे भी उड़ाए थे और वो
And
कौन था?
you spoke about me taking your point earlier, and you did the same. I was going to say this only. So we have like I saw a video today of like Brendan McCollum getting bowled by Mitchell Stark after like the explosive performance, destructive he had in that entire World Cup, and Rohit Sharma similarly has led his team from the front, and he's faced with the same man in Mitchell Stark,
Demon, जिन बंदा है पूरा. Mitchell
and
Stark,
that will be the battle. I think to start
one
with,
of
I'm
the
looking
worst.
forward to the most. I think.
I think that's one matchup I'm really really looking forward to. And then another, I think a lot of the reason that India beat Australia the first time, aside from playing outstanding cricket, was just Australia had them three down, and the guy they were waiting for to show up on that Chennai pitch did not show up. Adam Zampa, he's gotten a lot in much better form since then, and I'm not quite sure about how much success he's had against India, but I know he's had success against Virat Kohli in the past.
Mhm.
So I think that battle of the two spinners, because I know that when Kuldeep bowls, he could end the match there
Mhm.
versus
Yeah.
Australia's top order against their middle order. That's a possibility. So uh, I think Adam Zampa has to rise to that occasion. And then, is there anything else you see as a
I'd be
key
worried
matchup?
about that from an Australian perspective because I know Adam Zampa always tends to get wickets and he does deliver. But against the Indian batsmen with the quality that they have to play spin, I don't know if he'll be able to be as effective. If he is, I think that's definitely going to be a huge bonus for Australia.
He I think we have to start giving him his flowers though as a world class bowler because he's proved that now for I think the yeah bro he is. You look at the World T20, you look at here. This is the most wickets a spinner has ever taken in a World Cup, and not always the most friendliest conditions for any bowler. This guy has 22, 23 wickets. He's done it in the World Cup. Adam Zampa is a quality performer. I know maybe he doesn't always look at, or we have maybe because of like the him and Stoinis memes and stuff a different idea of him at times. Like, but he's an excellent bowler, and Australia will really really be looking to him. He's been probably the biggest reason of their resurgence
Mhm.
after the first two losses.
Chalan, at least like on the bright side, Arman, one of these two teams also has to lose, so we can enjoy that at least.
Bro, let's not lie to people and say we're gonna enjoy if a certain team loses on Friday or
Bro, like
on
honestly, like
Sunday.
I Australia really annoys me also, bro, because they like I always expect them to. on paper, I look at them, I look at the way they've been playing in the lead up to the World Cup, and I sort of make my best guess. I did the same mistake in the T20 World Cup 2021. I made the same mistake here. I didn't even have them in my semis, and they go out and just like, and I knew when I was picking it, I knew that I was making a mistake because these guys always come out and prove you wrong, and they're just always in your face. But I did it more out of what I wanted. I didn't want them to get here, and
Hey,
they've done it
but
again.
your prediction wasn't wrong in the other sense. Like you picked South Africa over them, right? And South Africa
Yeah,
did get in, so
yeah. I
it
picked
was a pretty
England
good
and
shot at the
Pakistan,
end.
so yeah, so much for that.
या मतलब पाकिस्तान का फिर भी पता था मतलब इंग्लैंड को क्या हो गया यार Why did they-
नहीं, पाकिस्तान का तुम कह रहे हो कि पता था, हमें तो नहीं पता था ब्रो।
नहीं तो
हम तो
बैक ऑफ
क्या
द
ख्वाब
माइंड
देख रहे थे।
पता है कि ये हो सकता है इट्स नॉट दैट
हाँ,
कि ये नहीं हो सकता
इट्स
ये
ऑलवेज
डेफिनेटली हो
पॉसिबल।
सकता है
या, दैट्स ट्रू।
England I didn't think there was a chance in hell that they like I knew their bowling sucked but I didn't think that they would not make the semis
Yeah, like honestly,
so
the
it's
like
been
pathetic performances from them. Like, let's be
yeah
honest.
bro
I think
come on bro
उनके
इतना
players ने खुद कह दिया, bro. Stokes said like we've been what crap, and then Moeen Ali said कि we're all too old. So I think they've said everything that there needs to be said.
सही है तुम लोग
Themselves.
जाके बेसबॉल खेलो बस यार
Yeah, that's best
Um,
खेलो. Um, yeah, Chal, then we as I mentioned, we'll come back with a deep dive of Pakistan's World Cup campaign because we definitely need to bury those demons before we can move on. So that'll be coming out in the next few days. But in the meantime, just one more game to go in this World Cup, so hopefully it's a good one. Thank you all for listening.